This program contains coarse language, mature themes, and the strong opinions of Dan Savage. Viewer discretion is advised.
Define GGG. What does sex positive mean? GGG, good, giving, and game. What we should all be for our partners and what we have a right to expect from our partners. Good in bed. It takes some time and practice. Good sex is a skill. Nobody picks up a violin and plays it perfectly, right? Human beings and their junk is more complicated than a fucking violin. It's a violin with many orifices and a brain, and feelings and opinions, and you do need to think about it, work at it, be a little self-critical, invite a little criticism. You need to get good at it. Giving means sometimes you give pleasure without an expectation of an immediate return on that gift of pleasure, particularly in a long-term relationship. You sometimes just sort of do for each other, and you should do for each other in roughly equal amounts without resentment creeping in, and every act of intimacy between long-term partners doesn't have to be mutually explosive. Both people don't always have to come or have an orgasm. It doesn't have to be about both equally all the time. Sometimes you just want to give, and you want to be giving. And game means up for anything, within reason. You shouldn't do anything that leaves you curled up on the fetal position on the floor in the bathroom afterwards, sobbing on the phone with your mother. Unless that's what turns you on, in which case you have much bigger problems. Game means kind of, willing to go there, up for their kinks and their weirdnesses, and willing to explore. One of the things that all people are told about sex, and I think it's bad for relationships, is that you shouldn't do anything in that relationship sexually that doesn't turn you on, independent of your partner's turn on. That if you're doing something that doesn't turn you on, that you're degrading yourself or you're being violated somehow, and that's bullshit. You shouldn't do something that turns you off. You shouldn't do something that makes you feel humiliated or small or violated. Absolutely not. You shouldn't do those things. But what people take away when they hear you should never do anything that doesn't turn you on is, I should never do anything that doesn't turn me on. And I shouldn't do anything that I feel neutral about either. So if there's something my partner enjoys that isn't something that does really much for me, I shouldn't do that. Even if that thing, I could do it, but it's sort of just, whatever, I could take it or leave it. I shouldn't do that. And the problem with this advice in the context of a long-term, particularly a sexually exclusive relationship where two people have to be all things, or as many things as they possibly can be to each other sexually, is that it's a recipe for resentment and frustration and despair. Say you all are college students. You know what a Venn diagram is, right? Two circles in this Venn diagram with the overlap. If there are two people together, they're sexually together, there are two circles. If sexually they're only a 20% overlap in their Venn diagram, he's here, she's here, this 20% is their overlap, both partners are going to be 80% unfulfilled. That is not a relationship that will last. That is a relationship that will be torn apart by resentment and frustration. And people do and will, and you say this and people kind of get upset. Sex is trivial, sex doesn't matter. How could you sacrifice a beautiful, loving relationship for something as meaningless or trivial as sex? People do it all the time. People sabotage relationships all the time. Sexual fulfillment is important. There's an ex-gay camp very near here, Love in Action, where they terrorize and spiritually brutalize children.